We're a third of the way through the year already. That's very depressing, but now we have more books to talk about because it's the end of April. So now I'm going to talk through a month of mine that I thought I read a lot in until I see other people's videos where they're like, oh, I read 20 books. Not to defend myself against KD's slander here, but I quite like wrap-up videos, and I don't know, I mean, it's just an easy way to talk about what I've read, isn't it? I'm not using it to like go, I've actually read some very intellectual books this month. I'm just smarter than you. And I also haven't read like 20 books this month like everyone else has. I think I read like 8 or something. Speaking of not reading intellectual books, I was gonna read a whole bunch of hoity-toity shit this month, but the first book that I started with was Tampa by Alissa for really no reason at all. My friend recommended this to me because they know that I like batshit things, and I was like, yeah, haha, funny premise. And then I looked on Goodreads and I saw that Alissa from Nerdy Nurse Reads had given the book a 1 star, and their review was literally just, no. So I was kind of convinced from there, and womp womp, sorry everyone, I really enjoyed it. So Tampa is a book about a young woman teacher who likes to fuck little boys. The book is by Alissa Nutting is her name. That's a very appropriate last name. I thought this book was hilarious, and it was intentional. This is a total dark comedy about a pedophile. This book had this incredibly dark sense of humor that I really enjoyed, and I love that people hate this book. That's fucking great. But this book is kind of like a satire about how hot women get away with everything, I think is what it's about. It's not like this book is particularly deep or socially relevant or emotional or anything like that. It's just about this getting you in the head of this Patrick Bateman-ass woman as she fucks 10-year-olds. But it is a comedy. I understand why people are taking it totally seriously. I get, because it's a serious subject matter, there's no doubt about that. But there are scenes in this that are set up like a comedy. Like there's a scene where the main woman, who's this total psychopath, is fucking a boy, and the boy is like, I love this is great. And then her husband comes home, so she has to distract the husband by fucking him so that the boy can sneak out. And while she's fucking the husband, she's like, ew, a grown man. It's so goofy. There was a good pace within scenes. It did a really good job getting you in the head, like I said. I thought there were lots of really funny metaphors and lots of like really deliberately gross writing that succeeded in being that. It wasn't just like saying the thing and you're meant to be grossed out because of the thing. It was good at grossing you out within its own writing. Like, I thought it was well written. But ultimately it's too long, especially considering what you're left with. And things can be cut, and also I think some things could be abridged in the book. It's not like American Psycho where the bloating around all of the disgusting stuff, which in this case is like prepubescent sex. The bloating around that in American Psycho is like the point. In this book, I wouldn't say it's the point. I would say that there are plot points that take too long to move. I think that things could have happened quicker and the book would still say the same thing. But it's a dark comedy and the writing is uncomplicated and we're in the woman's head, not the boys. So the fact that she's hyper fixated on everything about the boys makes sense. That's fine. I'm talking about, okay, slight spoilers, right? Slight spoilers. But there's a moment where she's fucking one of the boys and then she moves to fucking 2 boys. So she's got 2 boys at the same time. And then one of the boys attacks the other. They find out about the other boy and attack them. And I felt like the point that was made by having the boys attack each other could have been made earlier in the book if the boy attacked a different character. I won't get into too much specific about that. But I just felt like the book took too long and the plot spiraled too much in terms of what actually happened, and I felt like you could cut 50 pages and say the same thing, but you'd cut 50 pages in the sense of restructuring the plot. I don't know. The pacing within scenes was great. I didn't feel bored while I read it, but it was too long and it took too long to get to certain points. I also didn't like how at the end of the book, the main character starts fantasizing about murder because that means the character can be more easily categorized because then she's just a psychopath. Whereas I prefer it if she was like a normal thinking person who was just happened to be a pedophile and then that was the point. Like I would prefer if that was the point and not Oh, she's a psychopath. Her psychopathy was funny though. Like, there are moments when any of the men in the novel will try to relate to her and be like, can we go out on a date? You look so beautiful. And all she's thinking is like, fuck, he's so cringe, he's so gross. Like, and that was funny. It got funny the more it happened. I know this is inspired by a real event, and with the title and everything, it's clearly relating to that, but I wanted the book to say more about, I guess, society. I wanted the book to be about the place that it was set in, because it has a very distinct setting, and I felt like the book was just focused on the pedophile stuff. It's a revolting book, for sure. There's no denying that. I saw somewhere that Harmony Korine was going to try and direct an adaptation of this book, which is like the least surprising news ever. I don't think that this book is meant to be taken entirely seriously, and not to psychoanalyze the people who hate it, but I think the people who hate it view the book as trying to be more serious than it is. I think they're seeing it as like the serious subject matter should be treated a certain way, and the comedy is kind of throwing people off, and it's making them think that the author is being disrespectful. But I think the comedy in this case is okay, and it is intentional, and it is very, very dark, and I feel like the author trusts the reader to know that this is bad and is not trying to, like, convince you otherwise, you know what I mean? I think that the book's pace and its use of other characters and the main character's just total sociopathy and the, like, really ridiculous writing made the book into a comedy, and I think that is what it is. And, you know, I get it. I kind of love it. I kind of love the book, and I'm glad I read it. So there you go. That was a good opening to the month, was reading a book about a pedophile. The next book I read was Meta 210. I have a review for this on my channel. It was pretty good. The next book I read after that was Undiscovered. I also have a review for this on my channel. That's the worst book I've ever read. Then the next book I read was The Life and Times of Michael K. by J.M. Coetzee. This is the third J.M. Coetzee book I've read. I've read his big three books, that being Disgrace, Waiting for the Barbarians, and this. I don't feel the need to read any more of his. Of those three, Waiting for the Barbarians is easily my favorite, and this book kind of falls alongside Disgrace for me in that I like it. It has the same dry, perfectionist style that I have come to associate with him, and I feel like the book mostly succeeded in what it was trying to say for me, but I can't say I ever felt particularly connected to it or anything like that. But I thought it was a very well-written book, extremely well-written. The first 50 pages are amazing and really quite scary, as the main character, Michael K., is trying to get his mother out of an apartment and flee. And I thought all of that was quite stressful. And I thought everything in the back half of the book, when he is now at the doctor, when Michael K is at the doctor, no spoilers for the book so far, when Michael K is at the doctor and then everything towards the end, I thought all of that was fantastic. It was just some stuff in the middle that lost me a little bit in engagement, where the book is deliberately kind of unfocused and just following the character as he does whatever he wants. And I was not so interested in that. Like, there's a lot of time of him fucking around in, like, the mountains and fucking around in a camp, and I'm not so interested in that, and I didn't really see where the book was going. But then by the end of the book, I understood what it was trying to say, and I found that quite effective, and I kind of want to reread it ever so slightly to make sure that it was doing that the whole time. But it has a really great ending, and I really love what we're left with. I like how the war in the background is built around these kind of, like, ethical or, like, internal moments for this character. So the whole premise is that Michael K is trying to learn how to, like, live on his own terms and create a spiritual life for himself, although he's not really saying as such, it's just the thing that he wants. And he doesn't associate himself with any political party, he's just a figure that walks through, and there's this kind of, I guess it's a civil war or apartheid happening in the background. And the fact that it's like this real world basis, and it has these really, like, they feel very, like, possible events that are happening in this place. Like, what he's witnessing feels like something that could happen or has happened. I felt like that added an extra dimension to the book that I wasn't expecting and that I really loved. Like, all of these kind of ethical questions are brought up with the Doctor at the end. The Doctor sees Michael K as someone who is like a free spirit, a truly free spirit, even though he's kind of emaciated and he's gaunt and he's not living particularly healthily, he doesn't have any money. The Doctor sees him as a free spirit, and the Doctor comes to want what Michael K has, and part of the reason he wants that is for the specific stuff happening with the war, where they're bringing in all of these, like, military people for the Doctor to treat, and all of these soldiers and so on, and he's kind of confined to this role. And even though he's getting paid better, and he has this sort of outsider view of Michael K, where he's like, who's this homeless guy walking around? he still sees him as someone that he wants to join and live like. And the reason he thinks that is because of the specific war stuff. So the kind of connection between the two, between Michael K and what he represents and all of this apartheid shit happening in the background, was like incredibly smooth and really well connected. And especially by the end of the book, when he's kind of in a good spot. Like, he doesn't end in a spot that's like happy. He doesn't end in a spot of finality. You go, well, how the fuck is he going to keep living from here? But that's kind of the point. He has a small moment of peace at the end, and then he's going to keep searching for those. And I really, really like that about the book. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting novel. But being in Michael K's head can be a little dry and boring at points. And I only felt that in like the back part of the first half. So from page like 60 to page like 120, I was not very into the book. And then when it got to the doctor stuff, I was really into it. And also the first bit was really good too. So I do want to reread sections of that middle that I wasn't huge on, just because I felt like the book was faffing about. And then when you understand that the book is meant to be doing that because that's Michael K, he's just looking for moments of peace, then I think I'll enjoy that more now. But as it was, I was kind of like, okay, there's a war happening and he's just walking around, sounds good, oh, he's just taking a look. It was kind of like Paradise, the Abdul Razak Gurna book to me, in that the character felt very unmotivated, and that ends up being the point, so, you know, that's fine. But even so, I love everything when it gets reframed at the end. That's really top quality stuff. So yeah, I think he's a really great writer. He's clearly a writer that has a lot of dedication to his craft, and he wants to write a book that is like perfect. He's written exactly the book that he wanted, down to the word. And yeah, I get why this won the Booker, and I get why he won the Nobel Prize. But yeah, I don't need to read any more from him for quite a while. I'm happy to have read his big three, and yeah, that's me capping up J.M. Coetzee. I think he's very good. The next book I read was a book that I'm going to talk about in another video coming out very soon. So I won't say what it is, but it's my sort of new favorite book, and there'll be a video coming out where I talk about it in the next couple of days or so. So that was the next book I read, so that's book 4. I'll just put a question mark in the fucking description. Then after reading this unnamed masterpiece, I read the first part of Neil Gaiman's epic magnum opus, The Sandman, and it was a fucking piece of cringe bullshit. I read this book in a physical copy, and then I downloaded it and I read it in about 20 minutes. I could absolutely have focused on it with more intensity. I was skim reading a lot of it, but I don't care because I read enough of it to know that it was total bullshit, and I didn't feel like the book was ever going to prove to me that it wasn't. So I was totally happy with just treating it like the dog shit it is. I think Neil Gaiman is an absolute meme lord who is incapable of writing a good book. His brain doesn't let him do it. He's a 60-year-old with the writing talent of like a 30-year-old. And the writing instincts of like a 12-year-old with maybe like ADHD. This comic book was muddy, it was boring, it was very difficult to follow, there were no likable characters, it was utterly uninvesting, it was totally focused on these ridiculous philosophical questions I've seen expressed better elsewhere, all of the dialogue sucked. The whole book looked like the inside of a bin. It was so ugly, and I fucking loved it. It was so funny. There's mindless cringe shit that I've come to expect from Mr. Gaiman, with characters killing themselves and saying edgelord shit, and yeah, I mean, I thought it was all hilarious. I did not take any of this book seriously at all. The point of writing a book like this would be to make a point about something, would be to use these gods or these mythic figures to make points about humanity and humanity's relationship to itself. But Neil Gaiman just thinks these characters are cool and edgy, and it's so transparent, especially in this book. I'll talk about American Gods in a sec and the comparison there, but in this book, it's literally just like, he thinks they're cool. It's so funny. I love that people think that this is some kind of masterpiece as well. I saw that Norman Mailer called it a comic book for intellectuals, which made me laugh. Is it a comic book for drunken wife stabbers too, Norman? I don't find this as frustrating as American Gods, because American Gods is a book that has a great concept, and it does utilize its concept at points, but it's again hamstrung by Neil Gaiman's just belief that the characters are cool. Like, the plot of American Gods, the actual plot of the shadow guy walking around and doing all that shit, all of the plotting is the worst thing imaginable in that book. Like, the plot, he's just in a town for like 150 pages, he gets killed killed and then he's revived, and then the reveal at the end is that, oh, Odin and Loki were working together. Like, who cares? The point of American Gods is to use the gods to draw comparisons to America and say things about America, like how America now worships technology, so technology is now a god. But Neil Gaiman has created this shit plot in American Gods where it's actually about, oh, the gods are working together and backstabbing. Like, how is that the point of the book? Who cares? Surely the point of the book is this big elaborate metaphor that you've set up. And at points he does like little thematic asides, like he'll have, for example, the story with the taxi driver who fucks the guy and then they switch places. And that's clearly a comment on something. And these little sort of anecdotes are comments on things, but the main plot of that book is just some bullshit that Neil Gaiman came up with, and he just forgot to edit out the stuff that didn't matter. And I find it so frustrating that Neil Gaiman has these great ideas and is aware of what the great idea will be, and then just chooses to focus on the worst part of it. Whereas the Sandman just isn't trying, and it's just shit, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was inspired enough by the book to go and watch the TV show, and the TV show is also terrible. Like, it's unbearable. Really bad special effects in the TV show, a really bad main performance, this fucking, duh, I'm the Sandman, duh. The main character in both the comics and this TV series is just this simpering fucking pussy who doesn't do anything, and I know that that's his character, because that would be your comment. The person who disagrees with me would say, well, that's his character. He's meant to be sort of this simpering, like, meh, 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 meh. And that's fine, but why focus an entire comic book line on a character like that? Who gives a shit? I might keep reading it just to indulge the visual I have in my head of Neil Gaiman winning the Nobel Prize, because that would be fucking awesome. That would be hilarious. But no, this book sucks. If this is what people consider his best work, then he's a hack. I'm sure this is where all the dislikes on this video are gonna come from. Feel free to call me a cock in the comments and say that this book was too smart for me. I'm sure it was. Neil Gaiman, he's just a genius. He's just so smart. But yeah, no, this was unbearable, and but it was funny, so I would recommend reading it. The next book I read was Crooked Plow. I have a review for this on my channel. I thought it was mid. I've warmed to it ever so slightly after I released my video, not by much. Then I read What I'd Rather Not Think About. I have a review for this on my channel. I thought it was really good. And I then read Kairos. And Kairos was the last book I read this month. I will be making a review for that at some point. I also thought it was really good. And currently, it would be between Kairos and Maida 210 for what I would want to win. Maybe leaning more towards Maida 210 because I like boring books and we should make literature boring again. And that's what I read this month. I understand I wanted to focus on 3 or 4 books there, but it is IB month. It's International Booker Month, and I've only got one more International Booker book left before I am free again and I can decide what to do with my time. I am halfway through a book called Dream of Ding Village by Jan Lianqi. We'll talk about that in May. I've always wanted to try that author, and that book is really good. And I'm also just starting, I'm 50 pages into Praiseworthy, the Alexis Wright book, because Bob the Bookerer hinted that I should read it, and I've been wanting to read it for a little bit. And when he beat me to the party, I went, fuck it. I want Bob and I to be the only 2 people on Earth to have read this book, so I'm gonna crack on with it because I'm interested in Alexis Wright. I read half of her book Carpentaria and I DNF'd it, but I have started Praiseworthy. I'm 50 pages in, and I think it fucking rules. So I will probably stick with it, and that will be most of the month, I imagine. So we'll see what I manage to get to, but at the beginning of a month, I never end up reading what I say I will, so who knows what will happen. But thanks for watching. Make sure to dislike if you like Neil Gaiman, and bye!